Okay, Bryan Stinson, Riverwise Anglers Fly Fishing Guide Service. We're going to show you a pretty cool little uh, winter steelhead style leech pattern on the new Aqua Flies tubes that are coming out soon. There's the bug for you. Pretty simple leech pattern, single station intruder style, whatever you want to call it. So here we have about an inch or so's worth of the aqua tube is what I'll call it until there's an official name. And you can see I've got about like 3/8 of an inch of the ultra rig tubing on there as our junction tubing. Works great on these thin tubes. Starting out, use whatever thread you like, but I'm using Vivus 10-aught. I'm not doing an aggressive composite loop or anything like that today, so we are doing a composite loop, but it's not, overly stuffed with materials, so I don't need something too tough in terms of my thread. And if you get used to using this 10-aught, you'll do just fine. Okay, first material there is we're going to throw down some of this chartreuse chromatic brush. This is the 1.5 inch chromatic brush. We've got a little tie-in point here. And we're going to use this as a kind of a secondary prop material, and also to cover this bump we created tying over the junction tubing. And I like to tie over the junction tubing just to really seat it down. I don't think it's going to come off if you did nothing, but I put my flies into the hands of a lot of different experience levels of anglers, and beginners can be pretty destructive to flies. So that's, oops, that started spinning on me. Make sure that's good and seated on there. I'm gonna try, and for the sake of conserving space on my phone here, which is what I'm recording with, try and kind of cruise through this fly a little bit. And for the sake of, God, that keeps spinning out. Okay, make sure this stuff is firmly seated without stabbing myself. Okay, anyway, if the materials would cooperate, I'm going to try and cruise through this to kind of conserve on how much time you're spending watching videos, because we don't want to sit here and watch an hour-long fly tying video. We want to watch a quick video and then tie our own. Anyway, here we go. So, about 3 full turns of this chromatic brush to create a little secondary prop for our composite loop to go over. Using the back of my scissors there, cut that wire. Now watch out, there is still that little nub of sharp wire there, so don't get that on your thread and pop your thread. Then I like to just take and kind of reconstitute things with the brush, not overly critical here. This is more or less taking the place of a dubbing ball. It just has a little bit more prop quality than your typical dubbing ball. Okay, so now we jump into the construction of the simple composite loop or dubbing brush, whatever. I've done that ahead of time, so we'll cut to that here. Okay, so for the composite loop, very simple composite loop, we're just going to take two materials, some Senyo's Fusion Dub and some Ripple Ice Dub. Specifically that Ripple Ice Dub because of how that material works when you pull it out. So real quick, I'm just going to kind of take a small bat of this Fusion Dub and try and even it out as best I can. Kind of getting to be one length of material. You can really go nuts trying to get the perfect job done there, but with this fly is not overly critical. So a nice sparse little amount there, roughly the same, roughly the same length. And now the Ripple Ice Dub over the top. You'll see how this pulls out nice and long like that. Makes life real easy to just come in, lay it down kind of 50-50 over your center line. Maybe one more little smattering in there. We want this to be fairly flashy. Blam. Okay, and then we're just going to come in and sandwich over the top with a sparse amount of some more of this Fusion Dub. It can really, this one can be sparser. Right over the top of that. Squish that down. And then, if you're like me and things stick to you, you use the dubbing tweezer there, and you're ready to go. Alright, let's get back to the main fly. Okay, so now that we've got that ready to go, and in our dubbing tweezers, we're going to start our loop. Get that top of the loop closed. Advance our thread out of the way. I'm trying to do this without bumping the snot out of the camera. Okay, a little bit of wax on there for grip. And we have our composite loop of Ice Dub and Fusion Dub, or Ripple Ice Dub and Fusion Dub. And I set that in there 50-50. Oop, I told you, I knew I would do it. Let's try and keep that to a minimum. Pardon, I'm a fishing guide, not a videographer, so please forgive me. Anyway, we're gonna spin that up nicely. I want to try and avoid wrapping the dubbing brush into this if I can. You can usually pick those out fairly easily. Okay, now I'm going to take my dubbing needle and kind of free up some of that stuff. I don't need to be super aggressive with the needle because I'm going to come in with a more aggressive brush. One of these guys. This guy will really get that done. So make sure you're nice and tight, but not so tight on the spin that it will pop your thread. You just want to be able to trap materials, bind it in there, and then here in this aggressive brushing, whatever's going to come out we didn't need in the first place. This is volume control. I know a lot of guys poo-poo the composite loops. Well, that's just because you put too much stuff in there generally. So this will make a nice, sparse, kind of controlled volume of a brush. You know, when you get into throwing all that pred wrap and everything else in there, when you got 9 materials in a loop, yeah, it's gonna suck. So, again, Don't poo-poo the composite loop. Just keep trying, keep striving for a controlled amount of volume, and you'll get there. They make wonderfully swimmy flies that are ultra durable. And that's kind of the point there, is that they're very, very durable flies. Okay, we're going to hackle this on tightly, one wrap in front of the next, which will create its own shoulder kind of from within. Get a few wraps of just the thread around there for durability. We'll end up brushing that out. Okay, lock this down, trim the other guy out. And now I'll take, just a toothbrush style brush to it. And kind of, as I'm rotating around with the rotary, try and beat the snot out of it with the toothbrush, back and forth. It'll kind of reconstitute and blend all that together. There's our nice little shouldery hackle, too. Cool. All right. So here would be the point, if you're going to throw in junglecock paddles, do that now. I'm going to skip out on that and move on to the next material, which will be the Lady Amherst fibers. That junglecock doesn't add anything but a hot spot to the fly, really. It's more for you than it is for the fish. It doesn't add or subtract how the fly behaves in the water. So here I'm going to go in with some fairly long Amherst fibers tied in around the bottom half from the kind of this 90-degree point around 180 degrees. Just in clumps of 2s and 3s here with the longer fibered stuff. And you're not striving to get like full coverage here. You're just trying to have some accent in there and some additional wiggle. These Amherst fibers will swim and wiggle nicely. Secondary action of the fly. I'm just kind of going in quick. You don't have to make sure everything is exactly the same length or anything like that. Just get it in there around that kind of bottom 180 degrees. And there you go. Kind of something like that. Maybe we'll throw one more little set in there. Oops. Right along that side. There. So now we get back to the top of the fly. Let's get these a little longer. Just remove tension on your bobbin and you can scoot them around. Nice kind of wispy, long fibers. Yeah. Call that good. Trim out your stems or your butt section. And then we're going to come over the top of this with our hackle of just a black schlappen. Hopefully a good quality, kind of medium fibered, longer fibered schlappen. And we're going to come in down here a little bit into the longer fibers. That will be our tie-in point, and we can get rid of all the excess fluff down at the bottom. You're not going to use all that anyway. Kind of trim our little tie-in point there. You kind of see a little delta. Get that secured in, and then we'll just hackle that on. You can choose to do the whole thing where you scrape your blade down the stem of the feather to seat all the fibers back, or you can just stroke them back. I think either way works. I don't want them to cooperate too much. I want a little bit of resistance there so that they're trying to spring back up and create more wiggle and more like secondary action within the body of the fly itself. Or I don't know if I'm explaining that quite right, but I think if they're trained back and they cooperate too much in the laying back of the fibers, then you don't get as much motion out of them, is essentially what I'm getting at there. Oh yes. Getting nice coverage. This is adding that contrast to the blue, creating the black and blue fly. The ever successful black and blue in steelhead flies. Overly fished, but successful nonetheless. All right, we got down into the nitty-gritty of that feather. So we'll get back into here, lash this guy down. Boop. Get rid of that stem. And there you go. Okay. Feel like we kind of need to redistribute some of those Amhersts back around, which the water will do. You know, it'll all kind of get to where it's going. Okay, the one thing I didn't prep ahead of time, real quick, is going to finish off the materials for the fly, is the not rabbit strip. We don't want rabbit strip. I like to use a little black squirrel tail zonker. Very thin hide, very durable. It's a little bit more durable than rabbit. I'm going to trim off about what I think I'm going to need there, and I trimmed it off with a V-cut. I cut the hide to a point, if that showed up there. And then I can kind of trim off the front end if I'm long. Okay, I've stripped away some of the fibers there to create a little tie-in pad. I'm going to drop a little Zap-A-Gap right where I'm going to tie it into. I don't want a big glob, just a nice little drop to help lock that in place. And we're going to come over the top, get it on there, and it's in. We can cover that with thread, locking that down nicely. With the rabbit strip, say you're using a micro rabbit strip in place of this squirrel, over time, no matter what you've done to secure it in, it'll break off because the hide will eventually just break. So that's why I go to this squirrel tail. Swims nice too. Okay, and then to finish everything off, we just throw on our lead eyes, or you can throw a cone on, I suppose, would also be an option. For the time of year, it is April right now, end of the winter steelhead season. A lot of the times I'm looking to get that fly down super fast. So I'm risking rods. Oops, bumped the camera. I'm risking rods by letting people cast lead eyes. But it helps get down quick and in the zone immediately, because a lot of times I'm just hunting buckets and that sort of thing. There we go. This is looking good. Secure that in right as close in as you can, right on the underside of where that rabbit or squirrel hide bump was created. And then we're going to whip finish and glue it up. 2, 3. You can do whichever Zap-A-Gap or UV stuff at this point. I've got Zap-A-Gap handy, so I'm just going to use that. After, well, actually, with the Zap-A-Gap, you don't have to. Normally, if I'm using the UV stuff, I trim the tube and do the melt of the tube ahead of time before doing the glue, because I don't want to put flame to the, the UV cure glue or something. There we go. Just getting some of that in there to saturate into the thread. And there you go. Let that dry for a sec, and then we're going to take it off the vise, trim the tube, melt up front. Boom. Get in there with your scissors. And these new Aqua tubes melt really nice. Before I melt, I'm gonna just make sure that opens up again. Throw it back on the needle just to open that hole back up. Oops, I kind of destroyed the... Come on, get on the actual needle. No, I'm just poking through here. Well, anyhow, we'll go this way maybe if we can. There we go, just to open that bad boy back up. Now you can do the melt. Okay. That's the fun part about filming these things, is no matter how much editing you plan on doing or anything like that, you are just going to have problems. At least I do. There, melted the front really nicely. You can see that there. And there you go. Try and get this back on the needle. Success. And there's your nice little tube leech. I don't really have a specific name for them, but there's the fly. All right, cool. Thanks for watching, and I hope that helped you out and you get out there and do some fishing. Bye.